So before we get to the end of the show, let's get to the start of the show with our first review of Hot Fuzz, a 2007 buddy cop action comedy film directed by prolific producer, writer, director Edgar Wright, who co-wrote the script with Simon Pegg. Wright's filmography is impressive, to say the least, having directed popular films like Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and Baby Driver. Starring Pegg, Nick Frost, and Jim Broadbent, the film centers on two police officers investigating a series of mysterious and gruesome deaths in a West Country village. It is the second and most successful film in the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, succeeding Shaun of the Dead and followed by The World's End in 2013. The film opened on the 14th of February 2007 in the United Kingdom and 20th of April in the United States to box office success, grossing $80 million worldwide against a budget of roughly 12 to 16 million. The film was praised by critics for its performances, direction, and humor. In 2020, Empire named it the 67th greatest film of the 21st century. The film reviewed well with audiences and critics, earning 7.8 on IMDb, a Metascore of 81. Rotten Tomatoes, gentlemen, take your stab.
90.
I'm going to say 92.
I'm going to say 80.
Okay, 80. Okay. Price is Right rules. Jason wins 91%.
Go ahead. Don't we split the difference?
And Price is Right rules, Terry.
Price is Right rules.
Price is
I
Right
said
rules.
92.
Yeah,
so
that's
you've
you've
got
got
below
over.
it.
Price is Right
Oh.
rules.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that's how. It's been many moons since I've seen The Price is Right.
Shame on you.
I was like, we're $1 apart. I'm like, what? Anyway. That's still good.
Anyway,
Nice.
so thank you to Connor for donating the $25 to watch this film. I believe
Connor,
I
shout out
was
to
the... Oh, no, Ben, you and I both had never seen Hot Fuzz.
Oh, really?
Disgraceful.
I had only watched the first of the Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, I think last year. We reviewed it on this show, yeah.
my.
Yes. So I'm going to go to Mr. Movies, Ben Stapleton, for his thoughts on Hot Fuzz.
Thanks, Connor. Didn't love it.
Oh.
But it's my fault, I think.
Okay, here we go.
Not Edgar Wright and Sean Pegg and whatever his name is. The other guy that I never remember the name of.
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost. Honestly, every time I hear Nick Frost, I think that's his character's name because it's such a character name.
Very cool.
Anywho, I think one of the big grabs I had with this one is, can you read the synopsis for me again, Shane?
I can. Yes, standing by. The film centers on two police officers investigating a series of mysterious and gruesome deaths.
Okay, there you go. Like that, I was half an hour, maybe 35 minutes in, and still nothing has happened yet. Like no mysterious death. He was just chasing a goose or whatever, and I was like, what is this movie? Like, what's the movie part? Like, when does it get started? You know, like if you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that sucker doesn't actually start until 90 minutes into the freaking film. You've got like this whole vignette for the bad guy and the vignette for the ugly guy and the vignette for the Clint Eastwood guy, and then after 90, like a whole film, there are films shorter than the lead up to the part in the film where they learn of the buried treasure. Like the movie starts where they're like, there's a hidden grave in this old cemetery and there's, you know, gold buried underneath and now it's off to the race, you know, it's like a great race now to try and get there first. And that's when the movie starts. It's so long. And anyway, this isn't nearly as bad as that, but I was like, chuckling along. I did enjoy the humor, but then I just like stopped myself and I'm like, what is anyone doing? Like, why anything right now? Because I was just really confused as to what the point was. Like, there wasn't really yet a premise, and then it just happened. Like the murder just started, and there wasn't a real, you know, like call to action moment where that could have just been another funny, quirky part of this funny, quirky, light-hearted film, and it wasn't until like the second murder happened, so like, another 10-15 minutes into the runtime, before I was like, oh, okay, so he's going to figure out what's going on with these murders. I guess that's what the movie's about, and that's what all the synopses tell you it is, and that's if you were to explain it to someone, or you wouldn't want to reveal, I suppose, too much.
Yeah.
But if you were talking to someone about like, oh, which one is that one again, and you're like, the one where all these murders are happening, you would just go straight into the murder. You wouldn't go the one where this like excellent but super serious sort of action hero-y cop gets kicked out of London police force because he's too good, and then like you wouldn't say any of that other stuff that happens,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a long, ironic diatribe to get into the review. I like how I spent too long talking about how long the movie spent to gear up.
Right,
again, I really did love how Sean Pegg played this, like super serious, like he's a melted down, melting pot amalgamation of like 100 action heroes at once, like all of the take my work home with me detective who's not like nuts and he's not like angry, he's just super driven. He's just this guy who cannot say no to the law or whatever, and he's just constantly working and he's great at his job. I thought it was going to be completely different. I honestly thought he was going to be like bumbling funny guy or something that is earnest but can't get it to happen. That trope where you've got the guy who really wants to be the best detective or the best policeman on the force, and he's going for that polar rate or whatever, and he just can't seem to figure out that he's an idiot that can't do anything. That's what I thought was going to happen, but because it's it's Sean Pegg. It's like he's made for that role.
Yeah.
And instead he's always right and always gets his man and is like a excellent marksman, perfect driver. He's a hand-to-hand combat specialist. He's like the best cop you can imagine, thrown into a like reality, like a real world that has no room for an action hero police constable. And I like that. I like that a lot. But I don't know what particularly about it I didn't love. I just didn't love it, Maybe I'll throw it to you, Shane. You could tell me what you thought, being the other first timer here, and I'll go, yeah, I didn't feel that way because of this. I'll have some evidence to bring to the courtroom.
Yeah, for sure. Before I do, let me just quickly get to chat. Scott, our good friend, chimes in and says, agrees with you about the slow start, Ben, saying, I found that the film didn't really start until the scene with the farmer packing heat. And he also mentions, feels like a mock of a typical good cop, bad cop cliche in that Angel, that's Simon Pegg's character, is this seriously outstanding officer that does everything by the book, and Danny is just an awful example of someone you want in the police force. I agree with everything you mentioned. You talking about the first act, Ben. Another example of a really slow start that just has been cemented in my mind for so long, even though I've only seen it like once or twice now, is King Kong. Remember Peter Jackson's King Kong? It takes like they're trying to get to the island, but man, they take forever to get to the island. It's like 45-50 minutes before they actually start getting a wriggle on. I feel like it's half an hour before they're even on the boat. So
that's not dissimilar to the original Kong.
Oh, which you haven't seen either. So, but anyway, slow, regardless of what the first film did. With this one, I loved the. It was kind of weird, right, Ben? Because the very start, like they're setting up something like Angel's character very quickly. It's just like this narrator going through, here is why Angel is the best at what he does. He has all these medals, and here are all these commendations, all amazing things that he's done. And then it just kind of stalls out for a long time there while they set up the rest of the context. I did know within the first 10 minutes that I was really going to enjoy this film. Have to call out that whole scene at the start when he's being sent to the village. Now I'm forgetting the name of the actual...
Stanford?
Yeah, it's Sandford? Sandford?
Sandford, Gloucestershire.
There you go, Sandford. That whole scene with Bill Nighy and Martin Freeman and...
the guy, he plays the Centurion in Night at the Museum. I always forget his name.
I can see his face. Yes, you're right, Steve Coogan. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Yeah, that first 10 minutes inclusive of that, I knew I was really going to enjoy this film. I just... A similar thing to Shaun of the Dead, right? I love the like the humor that goes against your expectations. I feel like Shaun of the Dead did it really well. I can think of a couple of examples in this one that just really like took my funny bone and squeezed it in the right ways at the right moments, and it really helped that all the performances were really strong across the entire cast. I think, without getting into spoilers, I think the
movie's been out for a while now. I think we can go into spoilers.
Okay, well, I'll try and tread lightly before we get until we get further into the reviews, review, because I do want to hear from you both, Jason and Terry. I liked that this character of Angel is set up, and I am on board with him piecing this whole conspiracy together, this string of seeming accidents, this giant plot by one mastermind orchestrating all these murders. And I love the way that he joins those dots together, like we would see with something like Benoit Blanc in Knives Out, right? Like he's the one noticing all these things, and you're seeing them at the same time that he's seeing them as an audience member. But maybe you're not piecing them together in the same way that he is. In fact, you're probably not, if you're anything like me. But then he does, and he confronts who he thinks is the perpetrator, rattles off all these things that you've seen, and he's been intelligent enough to connect the dots. But then it's not the case at all. And in fact, the actual reason that all these murders are happening is as ridiculous as the entire last act. And that's where I think it can lose people, right? Where it's just like, even for myself, I'm like, oh, okay, this is where it becomes that Edgar Wright film, that you come to expect in Shaun of the Dead as well. So yeah, look,
that's Edgar Wright so often just goes way off the rails in the third act. Like it's just he has to be hitting bullseyes all the way along for you to finally get to the end of the film.
Like think of the ridiculousness of Baby Driver, right? Like with John Hamm's character in the Mustang, rocking up at the diner with the coffee and the music, and it's so over the top, even more so than over stylized, even more so than what we've seen in the first two acts. That however he does it, he gets that buy-in from an audience, at least from my perspective, by the time you reach that third act. This one nearly didn't have me. I was like, I don't know about this. I think it was just the ridiculousness of 80-year-olds wielding, just insane weaponry. But I think that humor and the commitment of the actors to those characters as well, and how well fleshed out they were, I think kept me along for the ride. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Can't say if I enjoyed it more than Shaun of the Dead. I still really love Shaun of the Dead. But yeah,
I like Shaun of the Dead has a million little details that all perfectly wrap back around to like tie off all these little threads that are really fun to notice, like on future viewings. And I don't know, but I'm sure that there are some of those in this as well, but I couldn't really find as many as I could before. Like how someone will just like drop a reference here and it like comes true later and all that kind of stuff. You know? Yeah. There's the obvious ones that have a lot to do with the plot. Like a lot of the time people are saying, accidents do happen, or accidents can happen to anyone or whatever. And they're saying it like way before you should be piecing it together to mean anything, and stuff like that is kind of really cool. And like little cool plot, like really tight plot threads that are like the chief of the station says about his wife that what did he say about how she died? He said that she died in a particular way in a car accident or something, but it wasn't even telling half the story until like later when it's revealed like exactly what happened, and you're like, still like he was technically still true, all that kind of stuff, which I thought was really great, because you think back on it and you go like, oh, that's right, he said that thing about his wife. Now it makes sense that he's said that you reveal what's going on. There's a few of those things, but the Shaun of the Dead seems to me had like way more of those. Did I write that one mostly as well, or
Shaun of the Dead? I'd have to double check if they had any shared writing credits.
Again.
Scotty in chat says it's Sherlock Holmes-esque, even the weird cult vibes. Yeah, I can feel that as well, definitely.
Yeah.
So Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg also wrote Shaun of the Dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And they call them the Cornetto movies
trilogy
because they that's what they were eating or whatever when they brainstormed.
When they came up with the ideas, yeah, something like that.
So they were just like sharing an ice cream, and they came up with 3 movies. Is that how that story goes? That's crazy.
Have to look into it.
It's kind of nuts.
If you know in chat, let us know.
I like the subtle humor in this one as well. Like Olivia Colman's character, seemingly like a bit of a town hussy, and there's one moment where they make some sexual innuendo jokes, and the one character that barely speaks English, but for this one moment, you hear it very clearly say "cocks."
Yeah,
Actually,
he does it earlier too. He says tits. Yeah, that I was gonna say that's one of my favorite parts of the film is the interplay between her and the rest of the squad, and where he just puts in that one word that is like recognizable is tits, and then he goes, cocks.
I really loved the scene with the farmer, and it goes from
The 3-way translation. Yeah,
it's like it goes closer and closer to comprehensive each time, and then when you get to like actual English, you go, that is what they said. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because that's not like that's a legit phenomenon or whatever.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I watch like funny YouTube videos of interviews with these, old farmers from, different parts of the UK, and they it's insane. It's insane how little you can parse from what they're saying. Some of them, it's because they're nuts. They just drink their whole lives, and now they've got no teeth in their mouth, and they sound ridiculous or whatever. But some of them, it's like it's just really old guy talking about farming back in the day, and the interview was like, so how's farming changed since automation came along? And he just starts going, oh, it's so funny to me. I love that stuff. So when they did that, like it was perfect for me because that was right up my alley.
Yeah,
fun films, fun videos I watched.
Mr. Miro, this is one that you've revisited a few times. What are your thoughts on Hot Fuzz?
Yeah. Hot Fuzz is one of my favorite films to watch because it's just so rewatchable for me. So it's a spoof on all action movies, right? And they embrace all of that, even with Nick Frost's character loving action movies and like direct references to Point Break, and Bad Boys, and it's just so cool. I don't know, and I guess I like their style of British comedy. So mixed in with all of this, it's just a romp to go back and watch. It's definitely up there in one of my favorite movies to like not complain if it was on TV. You know what I mean? I'm like Big Bang Theory. Yeah, but it's so good. And can we just talk about like Edgar Wright's editing and like quick cuts and just how good he uses the medium.
Except for the action scenes, I think it was really, really good. The first one that really got me, because of the editing and the cuts, was when he drags all the teens into the police station, and Nick Frost, and the guy says, maybe we should just let him go because it's a lot of paperwork. And he's like, my pen's almost out, and he's like, with the two.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he says. He says something like, I've got it covered or something.
Yeah.
And then you go into like a paperwork montage. Loved it. Really loved that gag at the start. That was good.
I love that gag.
I was just going to say, it's kind of reminiscent of Guy Ritchie's kind of like, hey, Avi, come to England and check out this stone. And it's like that.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I love that stuff. It made me think of Guy Ritchie in a fond way, even though it was different.
Yeah. The one I love is like, as he's getting further and further away from the city, you're watching the signal from his phone just deplete. It's just getting out there, and it's really cool.
Hang on a sec. That was my only note. Like, I wrote that down like at the start of the film. Oh, I actually have another note because I thought one of the actress people was Rebecca Ferguson. I was like, that's Rebecca Ferguson. I can tell by her eyebrows or whatever. But it turns out it wasn't her. It doesn't matter. And then just right away he's on the train and going out to the middle of nowhere. And I thought that's what I saw. The bars, like every time he looked at his phone, the bar would drop another bit or whatever. And so I wrote it down. But then I swear I convinced myself that it wasn't happening because he looked and the bars were full again or something like that. I must have looked at it wrong. Because I believe you, Jace, when you say that's what was the gag that was happening. That's what I thought was happening. I was like, oh, that's so smart.
He's getting further and further away from civilization.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a smart piece of like, just I don't know, telling telling a joke.
Just the
No
Attention to
word.
detail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Speaking of which, like every time something would happen, James Bond, aka Timothy Dalton, would drive by in his car and have some music playing, in tune to what's happened in the event. Like,
Oh, so the lyrics are referencing. Yeah. Okay.
so, like Romeo and Juliet were playing when the car
right.
accident and
Yeah.
whatnot. And just there's a moment where I just know it's James Bond, right? So Timothy Dalton's like sitting there, he does like the whole cheesy smile. He's got the photo behind him with the exact same pose.
Really
Love
good.
that.
He was so good. He was one of my favorites in this.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was, I'm sure the movie does this on purpose, but I was convinced that he was the bad guy the whole.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah, of course.
I was
Like the
I think-
first line out of his thing, he's like,
Lock me up.
Lock me up. I'm a slasher."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What?" He's like, "A slasher of prices."
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm
Exactly.
liking this movie a little bit more.
He's the obvious red
like
herring.
exactly like a move, like an action movie, right?
I love the.
So yeah,
the-
I was like,
Well,
I was convinced, you know. So then I was like, hang on, I always get this wrong. So it's probably not. But I'm gonna pin my tail on this donkey and say that it's him. He's the guy. And yeah, of course there's a twist. Of course I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
it was
misdirection.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun to blame him.
Yeah.
I just want to, if I may, start with my thoughts. I love this film as well. I do revisit it semi-frequently. After we moved in here, which was in April, I've seen it since then, and I watched it again today. And I have to disagree with the slow start because being a problem, because the whole, like the if you approach the movie as it sets it up, he's this super cop, and then they send him to like the quietest, like best town, quaint little village. He's so out of place in this thing, and so like, how does this guy do police work? How does he like, what version of super cop fits in that environment, and how is he supposed to navigate it? I find that really inherently funny because it's the overachieving kind of thing. One of the things I like about the character, which to contrast it with the other guys, the shit hot Dwayne Johnson and Samuel L. Jackson cops, they hate doing paperwork. They just love the guts and glory element of the job. Simon Pegg froths on the paperwork as well. He's like, one of the first pieces of advice he gives Danny is like that the notebook is his best weapon. It's like, he's like, the number of times this has literally saved my life. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. But the way he uses it in that interaction is very, very cool. Like, I love that he's not just a bad boys kind of cop. There's British crime and murder mystery stuff that's laced through this film as well. So it's not just a buddy cop thing. They even make a reference to one of the detectives, the Andys, call him Miss Marple, which is a British crime murder mystery solver. Yeah, Agatha Christie character. And so there's elements of that threaded throughout this. And so he's not just this pew kind of police guy. And without that preamble, without the time that they take for him to adjust to being in this village in podunk nowhere, Gloucestershire, England, like, I didn't find myself. I was trying to like think back to when I first watched this. There was an element of something's got to go sideways, because that's like Shaun of the Dead's very similar to that. It starts quite slowly and then zombies, but you know that they're coming because of the poster and because of the name of the film. This is like, all right, it's a cop thing. It's a British cop thing. Okay, he's a super cop. All right, he's in the middle of a quiet village. And then he starts kicking ass as a cop because he's like underage drinking, drink driving, and he books him. And then it's like public indecency and public urination. And there's so many little things within those moments that I love. Like,
when's your birthday?
Exactly. He's like, when's your birthday? He's like, 26th of February. Which year? He's like, every year. I'm like, oh, you little shit. But he's kicked them out, and like the bartender guy's like, "Can I get you another cranberry juice?" Because all of his business is gone. Super tight, really funny little situational piece of humor. But one of my favorite bits is the red-headed kid that they find publicly urinating. He's like, "Oi!" and he like turns, keeps urinating, and you hear it start hitting Danny's shoes, and Danny kind of half reacts and doesn't, but he kind of like smirks and finds it funny, but because he's drunk. I'm like, that's really, really fun. Attention to kind of detail. It's little bits that make the broader bit funny, or funnier. I love that he thinks that he's got this underlying plot, and it's almost it is something out of a convoluted murder mystery. The plot that's going on, that he thinks that he's onto, and I love that in itself was a misdirect. Like you've got the obvious bad guy in Skinner, and he isn't, which is again, crime fiction red herrings exist. Like it's never the most obvious person. It's often the least obvious. I don't know. I love how this film just kind of strings you along, feeds you bits and pieces, and even if you're making the connections that Simon Pegg's character is making, which you probably wouldn't be able to, and he is meant to be something like a Sherlock Holmes because he's this amalgam of all of crime fiction, whether it's buddy cop police movies from America, or whether it's The Bill or an Agatha Christie murder mystery. He's this and Sherlock Holmes, Midsummer Murders, or the Sherlock Holmes character. Like he's meant to be that, and he still gets it so wrong because Edgar Wright is like, we're gonna like Inception this a layer deeper. By saying like it's not just this convoluted plot that he thinks it is. It's literally just this neighborhood watch group that have become murderers, and then like we want a clean and tidy place, and we'll kill anyone who like threatens that. And the jarring kind of like you've got this cultish meeting. And they're chanting, but he's like, just before we begin, the two boys that were born, they've been named X and Y, and we've all been invited to the christening. And they're like, oh great, that's lovely. It's just this like, and then on to talking about the death of, or presumed death of the titular character. I love it. I'm along for the ride the whole way through.
And because I know what I'm in, sorry, my action figure's fallen over. Because I know what I'm in for with Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright and Nick Frost. Like, I know I'm going to be there in the quieter parts for the comedy, and then in the action parts for the cool action sequences and the homages to American cinema. And
there's a bunch of winks and nods to Shaun of the Dead, like the fence jumping scene when they're chasing after the shoplifter. He's like, wait, we'll just skip through, and then like he jumps rather than fall.
Frost gets me every
Nick
time.
Frost
that first
just
fence
tackles it so hard. He eats shit so hard. It makes me laugh every time. the other moment that is just great. He has the epiphany while they're having the cornettos in the police car. He's like, no luck catching them killers then. And he's like, we've got to get to the station right now. And Nick Frost just like chomps off the top of it and immediately has a brain freeze. But the way that he demonstrates that he has a brain freeze, it's got a direct line to my funny bone. Like if I have to make sure that I'm not eating or drinking, because it would make me spit chips or spit take every time. It's so funny.
The writing in that is really good, because he's just said, like, they're having the cornettos and he has the brainwave. He's like, oh, brain freeze? And he's like, no, brainwave.
Brainwave.
And he's like, we got to get to the station right away. And then he just gives himself a brain freeze for no apparent reason at all.
Oh!
The thing that got me from him was the timing of him telling the story of how his mum died, and it's like a really sad and solemn part of the film, and they're drinking and they're down in the dumps or whatever. And he's just finished saying like, I really miss her or something like that. And he goes, anyway, look at this. And he just like stabs his eye, like the blood.
With the ketchup packet.
With no delay. Like it just goes from the lowest of lows. To ridiculous.
Scotty in chat, something else I like regarding the big twist is how they all play a part without me as a viewer ever thinking about it. When the reporter is killed and the church and Angel is in a hurry to go meet him, but the vicar is rolling the lottery box at a painfully tedious pace. Yeah, I hear about the start, Terry. Like, I don't disagree. Like, there are fun details along the way. This film, when I compare it with Shaun of the Dead, it kind of reminds me of, I'm forgetting who explained this, like, cinematic metaphor, if you will. But they use it to juxtapose what the difference between surprise and like suspense or tension, and that is, surprise is two people sitting at a dinner table and then a bomb explodes underneath the table. That's surprise. Suspense is when you as the audience member see the ticking time bomb under the dinner and you watch them converse. And I think Hot Fuzz is the surprise. It's like, what is the ticking time bomb? To Ben's point, like, what is this story? Because we don't know. Like, it's enjoyable along the way, but I'm just like, even by the time the first accident murder happened, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is going to be like the thing that, you know, directs Angel's attention, or the thing that we as audience members are along the ride for. Before that, we're not really given anything. Not to say that it's bad. It's just like there's nothing to grasp onto from my perspective.
You know,
so
a lot of people, I reckon, like a majority of people, would not really mind at all if there was no movie. Like, if it was just the first 40 minutes and then more, and then
a lot of Woody Allen movies are like that, right? It's like, think of Irrational Man, where it's just like, what is this movie? There's a professor and a student that maybe they're having an affair. Is that the story? And then all of a sudden, like 70 minutes in, it's like, oh, okay, murder. Okay, that's what this film's about.
Yeah, a whole bunch of death.
And that's the path I can't follow for some reason. I have to understand, and so I'm just sitting there not understanding, like, what's happening. But something has to happen, and that's the suspense I'm feeling after about 10 minutes and up to about 35-40 minutes until the movie starts, where I'm happily distracted at the start of the humor, and then I'm like enjoying, and then less, and then enjoying a little less, and then I'm like, well, when's this movie going to happen? And starting to worry. I don't know why. There's no good reason for it. But yeah, it kind of like reminds me of this interview I watched of Hitchcock, where he's talking about how he learned the value of suspense when he made a movie that featured a little boy who had like a bomb, and he was like trying to like get out of the town or whatever and so the suspense was like, is this bomb going to go off? What's going to happen to the boy? What's going to happen with the bomb? Who knows? And he literally doesn't solve the question. Like, he just poses the question, and you just watch the boy like walking off into the distance, and like nothing conclusive happened. Like, he just ends the movie or whatever. And he said like the amount of backlash he got from audiences from doing that to them was worse than he could ever have done by having the bomb explode and kill the boy or whatever. So he learned the value of suspense, but then how you can take it like way too far and ruin it. And I don't know, it just reminded me of that. Like, I'm not saying it was a bad suspenseful moment or anything. It's just like the ability to just sit there and have nothing happen.
There's a parallel in classical music with that as well, or music in general. Composers that wanted to push the envelope would not close off chords. Like, they would have a chord progression that has been well established, and then they would just leave it hanging, and the audience would start to feel uncomfortable,
then annoyed,
and then annoyed because they haven't been brought back down with the appropriate chord. It's avant-garde.
There's a thing, I can't remember what it's called. It's a thing that Christopher Nolan does in practically all these movies to build suspense in the suspenseful parts. Like, especially
no audio at all. You can't hear what the characters are saying.
Yeah, that helps. With regards to the score, he'll have this illusory effect where there are 3 tones at different levels that are all rising, and he's playing with the volumes of each of them, so that the top tone is losing volume as it goes up high in pitch, and the bottom tone is gaining volume as it's going up in pitch. Basically, it means you can just play this one tone on a loop forever, and it sounds like, to human stupid ears, that the chord is progressing upwards all the time, but it is going nowhere. And it is a horrible thing to listen to for like more than 8 seconds in a row, and he just loves to do that to like build suspense in sequences.
With an auditory hallucination,
with this auditory hallucination. Like, Hans Zimmer has done it for him in like 4 films. and it's just like this.
I'm pretty sure it happens in Joker interrogation scene, right? Pretty sure that's when it.
Possibly, yeah.
I just know it when it happens in gosh, what the
Inception?
In Tenet. Thank you, Terry. Everyone was going to throw names, but Terry got the right one, so he gets the thanks. Yeah, in Tenet, it happens at the at the start when the terrorists are attacking the orchestra, the opera house or whatever. I just remember it being in that one. But I remember watching a video about it and being like, that is pretty an unusual punishment to inflict on poor, just people watching the film or whatever. But yeah, honestly, I do reckon that it's just a lacking feature. I don't have this feature where I can be like this Nick Frost character in the movie, and like he's just reading the synopsis in the back of the DVD, and he's reading the garbage that means nothing at the on the cover, where it's just like amazing action with brilliant consequence or something like that. He's like, like that, like that being enough to draw people in. I don't have that part, or like I just said, how stoner movies do it really well, where there's nothing actually happening. It's just here's another scene where hilariousness ensues or whatever. There's no real point to any of this, and we're not going anywhere. I can't do it for some reason, but lots of people can do it. Our mutual friends, Terry, Mel, and Alex, those are the guys who I keep referring to as my litmus test for a movie I'm going to hate. I'm like,
right,
if it's a Mel and Alex, if it's a Mel and Alex like date night movie, I am going to hate it. Like with obvious exceptions, they also like great movies, but they also like they also like these movies, which I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying it's a bad.
No.
Ben,
you. Yes.
Ben, the audience.
It's not your cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's not your yum.
And that's okay.
Again, ironic that I was just rolling over and over again and not really getting to my point. I love it.
I do want to mention just one little bit that tickled my funny bone, and that was the way the line was delivered. And that was the old man who's basically watching all the CCTV footage and sees like the 5 kids in their hoodies like sitting down in this like just in the street about, and he's just like, these guys loitering, sitting. The way he says sitting is so good.
I love when he's handing the printouts of the statue man, and they're all the same frame. And updated on each of them. So good. He's at 1 p.m. and at 2 p.m. and at 3 p.m. and he's just doing the same frame. Really good.
One of my favorite lines is the crusty jugglers. It's like, we'll be up to our necks in crusty jugglers. And they're like, crusty jugglers. So good.
So good. Anyway, that is our review of Hot Fuzz. Where was it? Stan? I think we watched it on Stan.
Yeah, it's on Stan.
So, yes, if you like me and Ben, have not seen this one, encourage you to do so. It's a good one.